Alright guys, and welcome to episode 60 of Below the Bar.
In this episode, expect to find out the 5 steps you can take to transform how you eat, feel and perform, what happens to your sleep after a night out,
And why Steven Bartlett is a nutrition charlatan.
Let's get into it. Welcome back to episode... For audio listeners, we had an indiscriminate bicep pose there after 10 seconds of recording from Shep. Threw me off. Yes, so welcome back to episode 60 of Below the Bar, no less.
Yeah, and to mark this monumentous occasion, we are going to actually do a planned episode for once.
Well, to mark this momentous occasion, we've decided to record the episode twice.
Yeah. So episode 60, take 2.
Yeah, so what happened basically is 2 weeks ago when we last batch cooked some episodes, we recorded this episode and then when I came to edit it, realised that the mics hadn't actually been plugged in properly. So
Have we checked that?
There was no audio. Yeah, I've made sure it's plugged in this time. So yeah, we did, not to blow my own trumpet, a good episode, and as Shep said, it was planned and it was thoughtful. It was full of knowledge and education and wisdom.
Unfortunately, you guys won't hear that.
Unless you're fucking lip readers, then none of it would be wasted on you. So here we are back again 2 weeks later. Now the initial trauma has worn off.
Yeah.
To give it another go, effectively.
We're going to try again and try and be just as accurate as we were last time.
And as I said, we have already recorded this, so we'll try not to make it sound too kind of forced and inauthentic. But to be honest, I can't really remember what we went into last time, so it should be good to go.
Yeah, and we could have just brushed over it, but I think it probably speaks to the gravity of the trauma that we had to tell you.
And the authenticity that we kind of espouse on this podcast as well. We're always transparent with you guys. There's no stone left unturned, for,
right.
For better or for worse. Yes.
Anyway.
So as you will have seen from the title of the episode, this is a top 5 nutrition tips for you, effectively, as a listener. The listener. So this is for someone who's kind of like reached the point where they think they need to kind of sort their diet out. As they say, you can't out-train a bad diet.
Yes.
So this is kind of like a 5-point checklist in chronological order that you can kind of deploy to go about improving how you eat.
And as we exit summer, this becomes more and more pertinent, as you've probably just like cut for summer or whatever and got the motivation of the holidays and stuff. Now, we're looking at Christmas. We still probably need to stay dialed in a little bit, so this is how we can get back on track.
100%. And for everyone that's kind of dialing into a specific performance-based goal, as we come out of summer, we also approach kind of like race season. Mm-hmm. So people that are training for like a Hyrox or like a marathon, a half marathon, a 10K, a 5K, you guys will also kind of want to dial in on your nutrition. So this is relevant to you as well. So don't think you can get away with it. But I don't need to look after my nutrition. Bollocks.
You do.
Your body is a car, and you can only go as far as the fuel that you put in it. So
listen in.
So as I said, these are in chronological order. So kind of like number 5 is the first step, and then et cetera, up to number 1.
As you go through, yeah. So this should be as actionable as it comes, really.
Yes. So we'll jump straight in at number 5, and this is kind of think about what you're eating. So again, this is kind of like self-explanatory, really. Like if you want to improve something, you need to check in with where you're at the minute first.
What gets measured gets improved.
Exactly, it's a truism.
So yeah, so having like an audit of what you're currently eating, and that comes in the form of like a food diary or something like that.
This can manifest itself in lots of different ways. Kind of whatever floats your boat, really. Like ideally, you would keep kind of like a digital or a physical food diary. But the first step really is just being more mindful, if anything. Kind of actually thinking about what you're putting into your body, as opposed to just being on automatic pilot.
Yeah, and a lot of that just comes down to forethought and planning a little bit as well. Like figuring out, probably going to have 3 meals today. What are they going to look like? And it doesn't come down to, like we'll get into, like specifics in terms of numbers and fucking protein and whatever. You're just thinking about, is the 3 meals I've got loosely planned this for the rest of the day going to be conducive or not conducive to where I want to be? And you probably, like most people, are going to know whether a Mackey's at lunchtime is going to serve them or not. And
we're
Spoiler alert.
yeah, we're not expecting you to become personal trainers. We're not saying that. Like, you don't need to get bogged down in kind of numbers and macros and calories. Like, this is you kind of being mindful to the best of your abilities. And if it's just a simple case of kind of, you know, is it fast food? Is it not fast food? Like, that's better than nothing. So yeah, I mean, the other thing that I should say, just from a housekeeping point of view, is that each of these kind of points have an end goal that you can then go home or take away and enact tangible. So you're not just being bombarded with advice. You actually have kind of like 5 tangible things you can go and do.
Like a 5-step process.
So like the gold standard really for this stage is to go away and create like a 7-day food diary, basically.
Yeah, at least 7 days. I think I like to do 14. While that looks a little bit like over-facing slightly, but it encapsulates more of your lifestyle. So 7 days can be very, you know, you can be thrown off by this social occasion or eating out here or whatever, but 14 days gets a bit more of an average over actually what you are having. And this isn't like a process of really changing too much of what you're currently doing. You're looking to get a representation of where you're at, much like you would do if you were starting a fitness program. Typically, you know, if you're going for like a performance goal, you would test yourself initially in that first week. You know, in your first week or two of sorting out your diet, so to speak, you would test where you are, and that's what this process is figuring out what the current state of things is, and how many times you're having Mackies per week, for example.
And be honest as well.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't a test, because you're only kidding yourself ultimately.
Yeah.
Like, don't lie.
Yeah.
Because as you said, that just skews your baseline.
Yeah.
So you actually need an accurate representation of where you're at. If you're scranning, you know, like KFC for breakfast, a Burger King for lunch, and a Mackies for dinner, you know,
that has to go on the diary.
It has to record it, because if anything, like any improvement on that is going to be stark.
Oh yeah.
So it's probably an uncomfortable home truth to actually have to kind of physically document at the time. But then when you actually go about making improvements, this, like, the lowest hanging fruit there is so low.
So obvious.
The only way is up, really.
And also, like, if that is the reality that you are, you know, that shit, for example, then, like you say, like the slight changes you can make are huge, and it becomes almost uncomfortable to actually note these things down. If anyone's ever taken like a food diary before, it gives you like 2 layers of guilt. You've got the initial guilt of like
multifaceted guilt.
Yeah, so like, for example, if you're laying on the sofa and you know that you shouldn't really have this fucking 3 digestives with your cup of tea, but you can have them anyway. Just in a normal life circumstance without the food diary, you would feel like, oh, fucking hell, I shouldn't have had that 3 biscuits with my cup of tea. But if you have that level of guilt, and then the level of guilt to write down, I had 3 digestives at 9 p.m. when I didn't need them. Again, it doubles it up. And then when you get into the next bit, which is changing behaviour, then it starts to become easier because the pain is so obvious.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say something then, but it's gone. What a brain fog, which isn't good when you're recording a podcast.
About nutrition.
That was it. I was going to relay our own lived experience to make it more relatable to the listener.
Okay, go on.
So yeah, don't think that we're just kind of like PTs. It's easy for us to say because we've got our nutrition sorted out. Because A, we haven't, and B, my nutrition and your nutrition used to be shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
mine to a point. At some points, still is.
It's always been shit.
Yeah.
So like, when I went through my fat phase at school, I mean, can't sugarcoat these things.
Call it what it is.
I had a Rustler burger every day for tea.
That is terrible.
That's stinking.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's why I was fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you, for a good 2 years, were effectively fueled entirely from sweet.
Chocolate fingers. Yeah. I would actually have a... they used to do these things at the budget shop down the road that were like broken up chocolate fingers. Obviously, I had no money when I was kid.
Like falling off the conveyor belt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they would get packaged up into this blue packet, and you would get like fucking 400 grams of chocolate, which is a lot, by the way, of chocolate fingers for like a quid. And I would buy them, and it's the equivalent to like 4 Cadbury's packs to put them in this perspective. I'll probably have like half each evening, but from getting back from school, which is like 3 p.m. I would nail them while I was playing video games. That's how hoofing I was when I was a kid. And then Mum would be like, "Oh, your dinner's ready," which would be this super like nutritious greens and meat and that, and I just wouldn't have any appetite. Like, you don't really have any. That's because I've been scranning chocolate fingers.
Yeah, and famously, we also went through a stage of gaming, which would kind of
compound the issue.
Because kind of every Friday and Saturday on a weekend we would just game. That didn't leave us much time to focus on nutrition, so ultimately we would just eat kind of takeaway pizza, wouldn't we?
And let me ask you a question. What was the number one thing neither of us were doing at this time? Was taking a food diary.
yeah, literally, exactly. So, like, if you want an example of why it's important because it forces you to think about these things, then learn from us.
Exactly.
Because
look at us now.
Still a sack.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's number 5. Think about what you're eating. Number 4 then, and I know this sounds contradictory because you're listening to this on a podcast, which is promoted on social media. Number 4 is don't listen to social media.
Yeah. Or certainly vet who you are listening to.
Yeah, okay, so that was...
Somehow.
Yeah, you've got immediately to the heart of the issue there. That was a bit clickbaity from me. But what I'm getting at here is be more mindful about the content you're consuming on social media, because it's very easy for you to listen to a TikTok here, a reel there, read a tweet here, and then before you know it, you've got this real kind of convoluted patchwork of nutritional advice that isn't actually bespoke or individual to you. So all of these standalone things may or may not actually be accurate scientifically, but ultimately it's not relevant to you. So don't listen to it, because your circumstances are almost certainly different to the example in the reel or the TikTok that you've listened to.
Yeah, your circumstances, your goal, like the position you're trying to get to, the position you're starting at is incredibly individual. Your situation with like work, with commitments, with everything else. So just listening to someone say only eat meat and eggs is fantastic, and it does really, really well on Instagram, but probably isn't going to be super conducive to your lifestyle, because you might be a fucking, I don't know, marathon runner who needs carbohydrates, for example, or whatever. Like there's always going to be nuance and individuality, and so you have to just vet these things. It comes back to, and again, we spoke about not being on automatic pilot with what you're eating, but also what you're consuming cognitively should be the same thing. So just watching Diary of a CEO fucking reels.
Oh, he's a serial offender.
Yeah, and being like, okay, well, he's a nutritionist. They've all said different things. One says eat loads of carbs. One says don't eat any carbs. One says eat before fucking 5 a.m. Whatever. So like, there's always going to be conflicting ideas, and I think fundamentally what you've got to look for is, what are these people selling? Because that's all. They all follow the money.
Always follow the money. You're so right. Like all of these people have agendas, and ultimately, all of this content that you're consuming is designed to go viral, not necessarily educate you.
Correct. Yeah. So it's going to be the most clip. And again, the conversation it's clipped out of could have been incredibly balanced, incredibly like well thought out, but the reel that's clipped together, like you say, is going to be the most extreme, most clickbait version of that conversation. So it might start with calories don't matter, and then you take that at face value and go, oh well, calories don't matter, I'll fucking eat whatever, and and then you're off to a bad start. And so it's just about looking at why these people maybe are saying these things and thinking a bit critically around the stuff you're consuming, rather than just taking it at face value and going, that must be true because he's called Doctor something.
And also don't feel stupid for kind of being suckered in by this content, because it's designed to be persuasive. Like there's the hook at the start. It's kind of a lot of audio visual kind of bells and whistles going on to hold your attention.
Well, fundamentally edited by a professional.
Yeah, exactly. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, don't think that you're kind of especially gullible because you've onboarded all this potentially kind of detrimental advice. Like it's designed to kind of latch on to you. Yeah,
and I think the thing to always keep in the back of your mind when you're consuming any of this stuff is that, well, it's a couple of things. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And 100%. If it's overly complex, then it's probably not for you. As in, if someone's talking about I don't know, insulin or whatever it may be. You know, they love the insulin
They love
thing.
the insulin fucking
Like,
trope.
just
don't they?
know that 9 times out of 10, the more basic it sounds, probably the truer it is, because it's not going to be the sexy thing that gets pushed out.
And unfortunately, I think we do live in a society where we attribute kind of complicated and sophisticated stuff with value. But unfortunately, the opposite is often the case with nutrition, where it's basic is best.
Yeah.
And that's not sexy, and it's not exciting, and it doesn't get you engagement on social media, but that is the truth. Like, ultimately, it's about doing the basic things consistently and well.
Yeah.
It's not about walking around with a fucking insulin monitor on your arm. It's not about only eating liver.
Or testicles.
Or testicles, or not eating between fucking certain hours of the day, because your body knows that it shouldn't be eating then.
And the thing is, the issue is, they all sound incredibly persuasive. Even like, I know sort of what I'm talking about with this sort of stuff, and I can think, oh, fucking that sounds interesting. You know, where's this study coming from? So it's so hard to stay objective with these things. But again, it's just about trying to pick through the dross, basically.
And we'll come to this. This will be a recurring theme throughout this episode. But the advantage of having a coach is that they create your own kind of nutrition ideology that fits your lifestyle and your needs. So instead of having this weird kind of like Frankenstein, you call it, don't you? This weird kind of Frankenstein's monster of nutritional advice knocking around in your head, you can kind of build from the ground up a ethos of nutrition that works for you.
And you can test and adjust and trial and error, and like, it's some things might work at a certain period of your life, and then some things might have to change for whatever it is. And again, like that level of nuance won't be accounted for by this reel that you've watched on social media. It needs someone who knows your situation, who has like the expertise to kind of box around it, and then has the ability to support you on the kind of journey to being consistent with it. So yeah, you're right. Like, the more you watch, and the more persuasive everything sounds, you end up just layering things on top of each other, and you have this weird idea that you can't eat any carbs, but you also can't eat any fucking eggs, and then you need to eat between 8:06 and 8:08 in the evening. It's like you have all these things, all these rules and parameters you have to follow, and fundamentally, you just taking all of that and getting rid of it and having one thing that you know works for you is going to be the best idea.
It's probably kind of politically insensitive analogy to make, but it's almost how kind of like some autistic people can end up with really kind of out of context weird kind of life rules. You know, like they'll only travel certain distances and eat certain foods like that. It's almost, I'm not saying that people who collect these kind of like nutritional chunks of information are autistic, but it's almost comparable in that sense, that you end up with this, before you know it, kind of snowballs, and you've got this really weird collection of kind of like laws and rules that you abide by, but because none of them are really kind of coherent or congruous with each other, it's almost pulling you from pillar to post, because they're not complementary. Exactly.
So I mean, again, just there'll be a rule coming in a minute, or an action step coming in a minute. But you know,
well, my action step was fucking block Eddie Abu, wasn't it? And then we decided in the last record that wasn't very kind of useful information. You came up with a good one. Have you forgotten it?
Yes.
I knew you would, because I can't remember it either. So that's good.
What was it? Well, I think the best thing is just to figure out why these people are pushing what they are pushing. I think that's the best thing. So again, you can see it on face value, but don't take what you've seen just like in this 8-second reel as the advice you should follow. If you see, for example, what's his name? The guy who's with the insulin monitor.
Oh, I don't know. Tim Spector?
Yeah, that's it. If you see Tim Spector on a reel and he sounds really convincing, cool. Go and click on the actual profile. Have a little bit of a further look through. Why is it that he's telling you that, you know, your oatmeal spikes your insulin? Is it because he's selling an insulin monitor that you then need to buy at 70 quid or whatever?
Actually, that's a really good example, you know, because this week, all of Steven Bartlett's Huel advertisements got pulled, didn't they, for breaching advertising regulation because he wasn't
about time.
he wasn't transparent enough that he was actually like a major shareholder in Huel.
Yeah.
So you get this fancy pop-up of Steven Bartlett. Oh, he's a successful businessman. Like,
He's in decent shape.
Yeah, he's in decent shape. He must know what he's on about with nutrition. Oh, he wants me to buy Huel. Oh, it's actually because it's lying in his pocket. And it's the same with this fucking Zoe thing that he's bought into with Tim Spector. He's always peddling that, isn't he? But he never goes into the fact that he's got a vested interest in it.
And exactly. So if you follow the money, you're probably going to come out okay. And someone like, an example, like, say a James Smith or a Lane Norton or someone who's, for me, a little bit more evidence-based, you will look into their socials and you'll probably just find coaching. Okay, that's probably better. Because, you know, I mean, there's obviously levels to...
Well,
everyone has to
famously, James Smith, I don't know, well, up until recently, never took a paid post so he can remain transparent on stuff and not kind of have his coaching or kind of worldview mired by money, basically, and interest.
Yeah, so always a good thing to look for is why that person is pushing that particular narrative. And if you can... Again, just dig slightly deeper. It's almost just one layer back of the onion, isn't it? And then you can sort of figure it out.
You should get into the... I guess the tangible take-home advice there is get into the habit of not just watching the reel, but then taking the next step of trying to unpack, like, right, what's the agenda here?
Yeah.
You know, and if you've got time to mindlessly scroll on Instagram, you've got time to then click on their bio. And
before you take, like... action on what they're saying.
Before you action what they've said, you know, click on their bio, basically vet them. Like, what do they do? What are they trying to sell?
Yeah.
What's the underlying narrative, basically? Are they doing it out the goodness of their heart? You know, is there any kind of... Are they qualified to be giving this advice? You know, what's their background?
Yeah, and I think that again, another little take-home is, if it sounds sexy...
It's bollocks.
It's probably bollocks.
Yeah,
there you go.
Because nutrition isn't sexy.
Yeah.
There you go. That's another take-home for you. Nutrition isn't sexy. If it seems tedious and dull, then you're probably on the right track.
Yeah. If they're telling you that veganism is going to solve all your issues,
fucking hell. Well, we're doing a separate episode on vegan.
And also, don't take your fucking... This comes in under the same bracket. Nutrition advice from Netflix, because it's not there to educate you; it's there to entertain you. So there you go.
Yeah, what was that vegan documentary?
Yeah, Game Changers.
Game Changers, that had kind of a massive kind of hidden agenda behind it, which wasn't kind of made apparent in the actual documentary.
No.
Fun, and it was also kind of fueled by a lot of iffy scientific research, which again was funded largely by people with a vested interest in veganism. Yeah,
it's a funny one where they were like, oh, like this subset of like the Roman Empire or some impressive historic civilization only lived off plants, and they were like, yeah, because that's where they lived and that's what they had access to. If you took the same subset of someone by the sea, they'd have had loads of seafood because that's what they had access to.
And their body had evolved
mental.
To get all the nutrients it needed out of that diet over the course of hundreds of thousands of years.
You can't use that and be like, well, they were super competent, they were fucking warriors, so you can be a warrior as well.
They didn't watch a random reel on a Tuesday and then entirely
Wednesday,
and then turn their entire diet on its head overnight, and then their body was like, oh yeah, this is sound.
Yeah,
I want to go and conquer half of Europe now.
Yeah, exactly. Vegan Vikings.
So number 3, bit of a curveball, but stay with me. Get enough sleep.
Ooh.
So, why are you on about sleep? This is a nutrition podcast. Guess again. Basically, sleep is the single most important factor in determining your health and fitness effectively. Like, if you sleep,
it's the bedrock, innit?
Yeah, it's the cornerstone. If your sleep's off, everything else is out of kilter.
Yeah, so it comes at like cravings and all the rest of it are off when you're underslept. Yes, and you're just putting yourself at a disadvantage. There's a load of things with sleep and nutrition, and it depends on your goal and what you're actually trying to achieve. But, you know, even from the actual like substrate in terms of like muscle or fat that gets dropped if you're in a deficit, if you're kind of well slept, it's going to be fat that drops in more of a dramatic fashion. If you're underslept, underslept really, if we say that, means kind of under 6 hours really, consistently, and you're in the same deficit, then muscle and fat are going to drop at the same rate, which is obviously not what you want. So I mean, like even just down to that, And that's not even something you can see or control, right? It's just
I mean, this is so kind of like multifaceted, and literally everything to do with your entire being is influenced or affected by sleep to some extent. Like, I can't really stress how much of an important factor sleep plays in basically every kind of biological process in the body.
Yeah.
To a certain extent. So, like, again, you just gave an example, like hormone regulation is another one. So, like leptin and ghrelin with the hormones.
Your hunger hormone.
Yeah, your hunger hormone. So, like, if you're underslept, basically, you're going to crave more hedonic foods, aren't you?
Yeah, and they did a study on it where they had a control group, where they gave them enough sleep and gave them access to a fucking buffet, and they consumed X amount of calories. They then took the same amount of people, same exact individuals, stripped them of, like, I think a couple of hours, so they were like 5 hours, 4 hours sleep, gave them the same access to exactly the same foods. And in the buffet there was a choice between decent food and shit food, and they basically, the underslept facet of people chose the hedonic, instant gratification foods, and ended up consuming, I think on average, about 400 more calories, which if you map that over fucking a week, a month, whatever, is loads of fat, basically, people. So, if you're trying to restrict for fat loss, which a lot of people are, or even if you're trying to gain, it's probably even more important if you're trying to gain weight, but like, being underslept is one of the number one things that's going to stop you being able to do that. And it's not even a conscious thing. Like I say, these are the same individuals. They've just stripped sleep from them. It's the only variable they've changed, and they've given them access to exactly the same food, and they've chosen shit food. And we've all seen it, right? The hangover.
I was just about
the hangover example.
I'm glad you came into it, because I was just about to chip in with that. Like, the most blatant example of this that most people will be able to relate to is a hangover.
100%.
That is sleep deprivation fucking with your kind of appetite
decision making
and your decision making around food.
100%. Around everything. Think how like impulsive you are when you're hungover, and obviously it goes with everything. And you might text someone you shouldn't do with like an ex or something. But the food example is, you're probably going to order a Domino's. You're probably not going to be super keen to go and make chicken and rice and eat that. It's not something you're probably going to be super attractive to do when you're just underslept, hungover, and I guess that comes into being underslept as well.
So I literally had this conversation with one of my clients yesterday, who went out last Saturday and was basically just sapping to me on the call effectively about how, like, the rest of his week since that night out has just been completely off. Like, they've been off it with their nutrition, like training, everything's just basically been out of sync because of that one night where you're basically not getting any REM sleep.
Yeah.
So you're playing catch up probably for the next 7 days, and this is where kind of basically binge drinking on a weekend can get quite destructive long term. Because if you get into that cycle of like your Friday and Saturday, then effectively write off like the initial part of the following week.
Yeah, and the older you get, the worse this gets.
Yeah, because the recovery process takes longer.
Gets worse. But like our age now, if I drink on a Saturday super heavy, it's like Wednesday before I feel decent again.
Oh, I'd be mate, I'm like 6 months sober. Imagine if I just went out on the piss now. I'd be, dehydrated SpongeBob.
Yeah,
I'd be like that in the morning. I just wake up fucked.
Yeah, well, I mean, the day after's really not a good sign. But like, you'd think Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are gonna be fine. Monday and Tuesday you feel okay, but you're like lethargic and yeah, it's just a weird place. And so, like you say, binge drinking. This is a separate point, but binge drinking is a destructive habit. Not for the reason that you're consuming alcohol on one evening, and that's probably not good for you. But it's the compound effect across the week. That if you take like say Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, so that's like five days out of your 7 that you're giving up effectively for that one night out.
And it's like, I mean, most people normally, when they think of drinking being detrimental to kind of like the pursuit of kind of like your health or fitness goals, is they just immediately go to calories. But like, that's
probably the lowest.
That's superficial, really. That's minor compared to really the more destructive force of kind of sleep deprivation and the knock-on effect that has. Like, the least of your concerns is the calories. In fact, if you don't get a takeaway at the end of the night, you're probably in a deficit because you've danced for so long. Yeah. You're actually lost weight.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's an interesting thing where people just instantly think the calories and the actual alcohol itself is the problem. It's not. It's
Sleep.
It's the knock-on effect onto your
Read
sleep.
Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep.
That's probably the best advice we can give you.
That's the big piece of homework. If you want that, the smaller piece of homework is get your recommended hours of sleep every night.
Yeah, 7 to 9.
And don't binge drink.
Yeah.
Every weekend. But I think we should do a separate episode on sleep and booze, or
We've done a booze one, haven't we?
Did we?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, should we probably do one around sleep then, but then focusing on alcohol for a section of that? Because I think it would be useful, because it's not very, getting all conspiratorial here. People aren't very well educated on it.
True.
And that may or may not be thanks to drinks companies lobbying.
Big Pharma.
Big booze.
BB.
Big Heineken. Ooh, name drop there. Come at me. Other beers are available. Other shit beers are available.
Yeah. Carling. So sleep, basically. Sleep enough. And 6 hours isn't enough. Also, people think that.
Again, while we're here, I'll throw the fucking this bullshit, bravado, hustle bro mindset, whatever you want to call it. This philosophy that sounds Gucci on reels and at face value, but the minute you unpack it, it's basically work needlessly hard for worse outcomes, really. Like, it's work hard, not smart, isn't it? It's like, sleep's for the weak, like I'll sleep when I'm dead. Yeah, but you will die when you're 40 if you don't sleep, so, yeah.
I think, did Maggie Thatcher used to say she'll sleep when she's dead, and
then
she famously died of... Did she die of, like, dementia?
Dementia, yeah, she got dementia, which is heavily linked to sleep deprivation, yeah.
Mad,
that worked out for her.
Yeah.
Didn't it, really?
And you can track that through most people's, like, history. Like, there's a lot of people in the political space that famously have slept really limited hours.
Because of the nature of the job.
Exactly, and they've come into Alzheimer's, dementia, etc., where that is a... Like you say, heavily linked thing towards sleep debt. Yeah,
Alzheimer's. Yeah, so who's laughing now, Maggie? The miners?
Not her.
Because you're in a box.
Right.
I can't help myself.
Lost a few listeners there.
Of the right persuasion. It's all right, because they've all been charged for writing, so they can't access the pod in prison anyway.
Yeah, probably can nowadays.
But yeah, probably. You can, as we've said before, you can bag off in prison now.
Oh yeah,
which is good. You're bagging off more than me. Jokes.
Not it.
Right, number 2, prioritise protein. Protein is the king of the macronutrients.
It is.
And if you're still unaware of that, then get to know.
Yeah, it's something I always just encourage people to have as like a first port of call, like a last line of defence, almost. If your nutrition and diet is going to go out the window, just make sure your protein gets in. As in, like, linking back to like drinking. If you're going to go on a big night out, making sure your protein gets done before, like in the day before, is cool. Before you start drinking is a good idea. Or if you're going to go on holiday, for example, and you're not going to track calories, and you're not worried about exercise necessarily, or whatever, just making sure you're getting those grams of protein in is something you can do to maintain things.
It's the lowest hanging fruit, isn't it? Really, like the baseline really that you can do when you're abroad is just make sure you hit your protein.
That's what we do all the time.
And again, like, one of the great myths of the fitness industry is that you need protein to build muscle. You also need protein to maintain the muscle mass that you have.
Yeah.
So it's not even just a case of if you want to be in a period of growth. Like, if you just want like maintenance, you still need to consume protein, which is why I think a lot of normal people who don't even necessarily have any aspirations of kind of training or hitting a specific fitness goal still need to consume.
Still need to have that consideration.
More, like, our parents are terrible for it.
Awful.
Like, it's just all carbs, their diet, I guess, generationally, because food wasn't of such an abundance back then. They grew up in kind of northern
and also like
working class households. It was all just, it was fill up as kind of as well as you can for as cheaply as you can.
And also, like, red meat was always pushed as being bad for you, and all this kind of thing. So, like,
it was demonised.
Their entire relationship and viewpoint on these things is different. But you're right. Like, even if you don't train the muscle, a lot of people have this association with, right, I'm training my muscles now, so I need to hit my protein. When I stop training, as like again for a break or for a holiday or whatever, then I'm going to stop eating my protein. Well, that means you're going to atrophy almost twice as fast as you probably would do anyway, because you're not giving it the raw materials and the actual creating like the environment within the body to keep hold of the stuff you've already built. And so certainly if you're in that situation, you've worked hard to build any muscle, then it makes sense even more to eat the protein to maintain it. And if you're someone who doesn't train, which I don't know how you found the podcast, but like if you're someone who doesn't train at all, then again, even hitting the baseline is still important, because whatever lean muscle you do have, just by virtue of being alive, will stick around for longer.
I think this is the other one that always blows people's mind as well. Actually, it takes more energy to digest and break down protein than it does fats and carbs. So ironically, the more protein you consume, the more energy you're actually burning.
I think it's like 30% more as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like an oxymoron, because it's like, well, you're taking on calories, but then you're also burning calories.
Yeah, but it's, again, like you say, the process of digesting that food. Of course, everything that happens within the body
requires energy.
Has some sort of requirement of energy, breathing, fucking temperature regulation, all this shit. So digesting food is no different, and we digest food in like carbs, fats, proteins. Protein is going to be the most thermogenic, or the most efficient with that, because it's going to take. I think it is like 30% more energy to digest your protein.
It adds up, if you're having like three meals a day, that adds up.
Yeah, 100%.
If the core component of those meals is protein,
and you're looking at stacking the deck as well. Like if you're trying to get leaner or maintain a level of leanness, and you're getting your steps in and you're training and all this sort of stuff, then the next thing is, well, how else can we stack the deck in our favour? And that protein thing is something we can look at.
It's like you're building muscle and you're also burning more energy, having to digest
it's
that
a win-win.
fuel. It is. It's multifaceted again.
Yeah.
It's wheels within wheels.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like the government guideline of how much protein you should eat is absolutely mental. It's like fucking 70 grams a day or something.
Oh, it's shit. Well, doing this nutrition course, which I've now finished, by the way.
Oh yeah,
that's
nice.
Eventually.
Good.
Yeah, so a lot of that is kind of familiarising yourself with government guidelines around nutrition, and knowing having come into it with kind of some pre-existing knowledge of nutrition, you can't help but feel that the current government guidelines or public health guidelines around nutrition aren't optimal. Really,
it's terrible. Yeah, that
especially
plate
around
they use, that
the Eat Well plate.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's so outdated now, because the vast majority of it are just basically fucking carbs.
Yeah,
people just don't need
that many carbs.
That many
most
carbs
people
in their diet. Yeah, exactly. Because especially, and the more sedentary we get, the less you need.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, they do kind of stipulate that it should kind of be like whole grains and stuff, which is better than just scranning kind of like more processed carbohydrates. But still, like, most people need to eat less carbs and take on more protein.
I mean, it isn't the message that gets pushed around.
Because again, like, these myths of kind of like red meat is particularly bad for your health are still kind of quite widespread within the wider public imagination, aren't they? So
yeah, and I think, again, the other thing would just be to take an audit, because it's probably shocking the lack of protein you're maybe consuming at the moment, and figuring out actually how many grams per day you are having versus how much you should, and having like an idea of that gap, because if it's something you're not thinking about, you'd probably nowhere near. Yeah,
definitely. So in terms of an actual tangible take-home goal, well, there's more than one way to skin a cat in. It depends how in-depth you want to get. At baseline, you want to kind of consume about like 1.5 grams to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight.
Yeah.
But then if you want to get in-depth a bit more, you can actually specify that it's like lean body mass as opposed to just all of your body mass.
If you're really overweight, the best thing to use is your height in centimetres, and you just use the grams associated with that. So it'd be like 170 for me. And you can probably use that regardless, to be honest. I mean, height in centimetres probably works most people, unless you're fucking super tall. But like if you're if you're relatively lean, like me and Ed would have, like I'm 78 kilos, so I try and shoot for 160 to 180 or whatever. So I have like a range to shoot for.
And I'm the same. I'll probably try. On an ideal day, you'd get 200, but like that's not always going to happen. No. But if you can, if you aim high and then fall a bit lower, that's better than kind of having pretty low goal, hitting it, and then missing out on kind of
the excess,
more protein, effectively.
Yeah. And the way I don't know what the next point is, but the way I split my calories typically, or the way I navigate things if I am tracking calories, is I will always front load protein, meaning I will try and get the protein in first. So say, for example, I have 3,000 calories to hit and I have 180 grams of protein, just to give some easy numbers. What I'll do is I'll try and eat my food so that I hit my 180 grams of protein, and then I might have 500 calories left, for example, and then I can be a bit more free and relaxed with what I use those 500 calories for, because I've already hit my protein, if that makes sense. So I think that's how I would navigate things, and that's how I do and have done for years.
And again, this is where kind of government nutrition guidelines can be a bit misleading, in the sense that they try to push you down kind of like your breakfast should consist of cereals.
Yeah.
Because shock.
Like our mate runs a cereal company.
Because Mr. Kellogg ages ago basically wanted people to eat more cereal. So he was like, well, how can I?
It's a bit like
how can I manifest this?
Yeah, it's a bit like, is it Henry Ford who created basically the idea of the weekend?
Yeah.
To have like more people have more opportunity to drive leisure cars.
Yeah, 100%.
And so they would sell more Fords. It's a crazy idea.
He gave his workers weekends off because then they would need a car to drive where they want to go to spend their leisure time. Like, it's ingenious, really.
So
it's like,
good.
if you want to sell cereal, well, kind of peddle the agenda that people need to kind of
carbohydrates for breakfast.
Fill up so you have energy for the rest of the day.
Breakfast is the most important meal of the day and all that sort of stuff.
Which, again, in certain contexts, is legit. Like, if you're going out on a long run or you're training for a marathon, and you've got a big training session, you will need a lot of kind of like simple carbs for breakfast.
Yeah.
But the average person isn't training for kind of an endurance event, are they?
And this demonisation of tracking things as well is mental. I mean, calories is one thing, and protein again would be like a deeper level of tracking stuff.
Yeah.
Like we had that whole idea of calories on menus, didn't it? Got really attacked.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, maybe, or last year, and it's just a crazy. It's a crazy thing, and unless you've got a really like bad eating disorder or a terrible relationship with food, you knowing the calories in something is only a net positive.
Yeah.
Because you then can make an educated decision. You can look at a menu and go, okay, I'm supposed to be fucking watching what I eat here. I can look at the mains, for example, and one's 1,500 calories and one's 800 calories. I'll choose the 800 calories one. Oh my God, I've saved 700. Like, whereas if you just don't know that, then you have no idea. Much like if you were trying to save money, you would choose the £15 option rather than the £22 option.
It's especially the case with eating out in restaurants as well, because I don't know what the exact figure is, but I think on average, like a meal that you'd order in a restaurant, if you made it at home, it would have kind of like 10 to 15% less calories, just because...
More in most cases.
Yeah, with restaurants and stuff, obviously they want to make it kind of tasty and hedonic, so ultimately you go back and eat there again. So that makes it more calorific because they use more oils, more seasonings and stuff.
Yeah.
So like that is especially useful, because it just goes to show how many more often than not, if you're eating out, the calories you'd expect to find in a meal are higher.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So again, just having the awareness on it is huge. And so don't listen to people who say calories don't matter or you shouldn't be worrying about it or whatever, because it's mental.
And again, it's like people go to the fucking extreme all the time, don't they? It's like you think if you're going to start tracking, you have to suddenly be Rain Man.
Yeah, and weighing every morsel of food.
Logging everything in a spreadsheet. Again, it's just about being more mindful. As long as you've got like a pretty good grasp of it, and you know roughly like where you sat with your calories and your protein, like that's it.
For most people, that is it. If you're looking to step on stage, you might have to get a little bit more forensic, but most people aren't.
Most people aren't trying to be professional bodybuilders, and they're not professional athletes, so they don't need to eat a very specific amount of carbohydrates every hour to keep themselves going.
No. Yeah, so I mean, again, it's that balance thing and the lack of sexy nutrition advice.
But yeah, consistently hit your protein goal. That's the That's the take-home advice from there. And then number 1, shock. It's almost like we've got an agenda.
Mad
really,
that's
yeah.
true.
Speaking number 1, you know, if you've done all the other 4 steps and you want to take it to the next level, or kind of for whatever reason the previous 4 steps haven't worked out, or you're still a bit unstuck, get a coach.
Or if you're struggling to implement the 4 steps that we've talked about, because that's the one. Like, one thing is knowing what to do, which we've just been through. Actually, kind of implementing it is the other thing. And obviously, you know, you don't need to be be Rain Man to know that implementation is going to be the thing that gets the result. So if you've been told in the last, whatever it's been, 60 minutes that you need to be looking after your protein and fucking looking after your sleep and all this sort of stuff, and you try it for a week and it's like, oh, fucking hell, can't be dealing with this. That's the beauty of having someone who can hold you accountable to that process. It's
the old adage of, in life you either pay with time or with money, isn't it? Like, granted, a lot of people are uneducated on this stuff, in which case, get a coach.
Yeah.
Equally, if you are in the privileged position where you kind of have a good understanding of like basic nutrition and training principles, but you're busy, equally, you need a coach, because you're too busy to worry about kind of implementing all that stuff in your routine yourself. So hire someone who can streamline it and make it work for you while you concentrate on kind of like raising your kids or doing, you know, running your business
job
or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure most CEOs know how to do basic gardening. It doesn't mean they cut their own lawn. Like, they hire a gardener, because it's just easier to outsource that.
Of course, yeah. And like you say, it's either time or money, isn't it? You can spend the time to figure all this stuff out yourself, write out your own nutrition plan, your fucking training plan or whatever, or you can just pay someone to do it. And yes, there's a cost associated with it, but it's, again, how much time that saves and how much like peace of mind that saves as well, in terms of you don't have to worry about, again, we spoke about it before, in terms of combing social media to figure out which fucking intermittent fasting or keto diet should work for you. Well, if you pay someone and ask them to fucking do it for you, then you don't have to worry about that. You can even block all of Steven Bartlett's posts if you want, because you don't need it anymore.
But it's meant. I mean, it's this weird kind of like double standards that people hold, like coaches and PTs to, whereby they're very reluctant to kind of part with their money to pay for like a fitness service for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, even though kind of like your health is the baseline and the determining factor in how much you can enjoy the rest of your life. You know, like if your bath was leaking or whatever, you wouldn't think twice about hiring a plumber to come and fix it.
Yeah.
But if your body's broken or you're unfit,
it's weird.
People are still very reluctant to actually pay a professional to sort it out for them.
Yeah, it's interesting if you actually do audit the stuff you spend money on, isn't it? You know, whether it be acts of status or whether it be booze or, you know, just stuff that just, again, we talk about, I guess, a lot on here, auditing things. And if you audit where you spend your money and ask yourself a very basic question as to whether it's serving you or whether it isn't, all that money down the pub every week, probably no. You know, you can, and we, probably examples of this, but you can go out and not drink, or you can go out and drink certainly fucking less and enjoy yourself just as much or whatever. And that is going to be inherently cheaper, saving you money to go and spend it elsewhere, or, you know, you're spending money at Bicester Village to go and buy fucking Gucci stuff, and that is a lot of money. And the only reason you buy those things, really, if you boil it all down, no one really likes fucking, well, maybe you like the look of it, whatever. Most of it is the status or the confidence it gives you or whatever. And you're buying their fake confidence, really.
Yeah, ultimately, like, you're papering over a much
deeper insecurity.
You're papering over a much deeper crack if you buy designer brands.
There's a reason why, and I'm not using this to posture really, but me and Ed are fairly self-confident, and there's a reason why we sat here in whatever we sat in, like Gymshark or whatever.
Right, we'll do an audit now. Bought these Crocs in America. As long as I don't lose them, I'll never buy another pair.
Yeah.
These Everlast socks.
I'm not even wearing socks.
He can't even afford socks. This Nike tracksuit's over like 18 months old now.
Yeah, Gymshark, wear these every day. But like, there's a reason why we rock up in this and we can be on camera. I'm not really worried about it, because we have kind of true confidence in the way we look and the way we show up, whatever. I feel like if you have to paint yourself in this designer kit, then it just shows to me like a bigger insecurity that you haven't addressed.
Yeah, because it's like you've not really you've not got your own kind of like branding or marketing squared away, so you kind of have to borrow the branding and marketing of a designer company to borrow their values almost, don't you? Like, because you haven't quite got your own figured out yet, or you don't like yours, so you kind of borrow someone else's.
Yeah, and it's also painful and quite intimidating to change yours.
Yeah,
so if you're someone who isn't super confident, whatever, it's uncomfortable to go and again start a training process or embark on something. It's going to be not only uncomfortable psychologically to get over that hurdle of starting, but you're probably aware there's going to be some level of sacrifice in terms of you're going to have to spend time in the gym or time walking or time fucking prepping food, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So there's that sacrifice, whereas you can just very quickly go and spend money on a card and then you have this thing now, and that's fine.
And that's not to say that you just go cold turkey and just kind of like straight up stop buying designer stuff, but you can kind of be conscious of it and be like, right, so for now, I'm still doing this, but obviously the long-term goal is to address kind of the deeper seated kind of insecurity or issue, and then eventually try and wean myself off it. Like, we're not saying that kind of it's inherently bad.
No, of course
buying
not.
designer clothing, like, if you like it, that's great, but saying like more often than not, it's an indicator that it's actually something else.
And look, it's obviously an example. Designer clothing isn't. It's not just that. I would say that applies to either. Like, there's loads of other things that you could say that about.
Well, the best example is the midlife crisis Porsche, isn't it? Like, you're not buying a Porsche because you want a Porsche.
No.
You're buying a Porsche because like you're not fulfilled. Like,
there's something else at play.
Yeah, you see, there's something else, whether it be kind of status or kind of lack of fulfillment. Like, it's not because you have an underlying desire to
drive a Porsche
or to be in the Porsche owners member club. You know what I mean?
It's all the status that comes with it. And again, like, if you can have confidence in the way you look and the way you feel, then that's going to be inherently more valuable. But of course, it comes at a bigger cost in terms of effort.
Yeah.
You don't have to put much effort in to buy a Porsche. Obviously, you do make the money, but whatever. In terms of that actual investment.
But yes, it was. So to bring it full circle back to getting a coach, like, a lot of the things that I try to kind of instill in my clients, and I know that you're the same, is that it's not just kind of like you train to kind of like a certain performance goal and then congratulations, like you move on to the next thing. Like, there is that, but that's the surface level. Like, the deeper things that are going on there is that you're actually kind of like building your self-confidence and you kind of figuring out who you actually are, what your values are. That's all part of the process of kind of being more in tune with your health and fitness.
Yeah, because like we say, it's the start point, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you look at absolutely everything, I did an email on this actually a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely everything comes down to basically the amount of energy you have to give to something. Absolutely everything. And if you actually look a layer deeper, then what informs how much energy you have each day is your vitality. So again, your fitness and state of health. And so if you can plug that gap or improve that, then everything else as a downstream effect is gonna improve from there. So, like, again, self-confidence, the ability to show up in even like job interviews and all the rest of it, like
how you hold yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it's all improved. And like the gym and the training side of it stuff is really just a vehicle for that, for you to explore that. Like, obviously, like, it's still an achievement in itself. Like, if you're going to run a marathon or kind of lose, 1 kilo, 5 kilos of kind of fat or whatever, all of that is good, but it's actually the deeper underlying stuff that comes as a byproduct of that, which is really valuable. And I think that a lot of people don't see when they perceive kind of what they get service-wise out of coaching.
Yeah, I think it's interesting where people where people are really happy to spend money on. I know obviously everyone needs car insurance, which it's a regular
car flex,
a regular thing, isn't it? Like,
it's worked out for you, hasn't it?
At least £100 a month on car insurance, and of course we all need that. But if you think of the actual value, and I always think like this because you get fucking rodded with car insurance.
Yeah.
Like, if you think of the actual value you're getting for that money, if you spend, let's say it's £100 a month, how much do you see from that £100 a month? Absolutely fuck all, basically. Until you crash.
I mean, I love triggering fucking car enthusiasts with this who will kind of die on the hill that kind of cars are a good investment. They're not. Objectively, cars are a money pit. And if you like cars and you want to spend your money on a car, then that's great. But don't try and fight the corner of, oh, it's an investment. It's not.
No.
Nothing about owning a motor vehicle is
certainly like
an investment.
New fast one, basically.
Yeah,
You know.
and then people go like, oh, but this is going to be a fucking classic car or whatever. That's great. Buy it in 20 years.
Well, it's just it's a weird thing, and again, it's an interesting thing to explore why people are so happy to spend the money in certain areas. But anyway, we could probably do a whole podcast.
We'll do a different episode on materialism.
Correct.
And how global capitalism controls all of our lives.
Ed's favourite topic.
Basically, did an A level in that. That's what communication and culture is.
Is it?
Yeah.
I like that.
Great.
Yeah.
Love that. Very Marxist. Get on board with that.
You can get on board with that. You like that shit, don't you? Yeah. Well, anyway, any other housekeeping?
Well, so the tangible take-home advice from that is initially do an audit on your personal finances, and then potentially not even with the scope of then getting a coach, but just it's a very useful thing for everyone to do, because I think we're so good at spending money and not very good at working out where that money's actually being spent.
Yeah. And just as a caveat, this is not financial advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to cover our backs legally, I'd like to clarify that me and Shep are not qualified financial advisors.
No, definitely not. Yeah. So we have no more points, do we, on there?
No, not really. That's the 5 points. As I said, if you want to kind of, if you're unsure about anything, or you want to know a bit more, or you've got any questions specific to kind of your individual nutritional needs or anything like that, just give one of us a message and we'll help. Like that's ultimately what we're here for. So
indeed.
Don't feel like you can't reach out. Other than that, I can't really think of anything else. The next episode is going to be a bit of a catch-up episode, but not a catch-up episode because there's not really a lot of stuff for us to cover at our end, but there's a few things
externally in the world
that we want to cover. So like the start of the Prem season and stuff like that, which actually will have already started by the time this goes out. So our opinions and ideas will probably be already outdated at that point. But
proved right, hopefully.
We'll stand by it nonetheless. So yeah, a bit of a catch-up episode next week, and then the week after that, things should get a bit more exciting because we're into kind of race season again. So
things start to ramp up a little bit, don't we?
Yeah, we'll go back to the old format of kind of like how
recaps.
Did this event go?
Yeah.
What's on next? Which is a bit more exciting because ultimately it means we're actually out in the world doing shit again, as opposed to just
gobbing off about
living vicariously through far right rioters and and Donald Trump.
Exactly, which has been great, but now it's time for us to live life. So we'll see you next week, and thank you for tuning in.
Peace.